Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences.
Good evening, everybody. Sandra Sheffer, host of Racing the Races. I know y'all like, it's Friday. Why this girl on our screen on a Friday evening? You know, every now and then we got to do that. So many cases came out today, particularly because it's the last day of the Supreme Court's session. You know, today was the day. So they issued some decisions that a lot of folks in the legal community are a little confused about, many of which, and also some of the things, well, I'm just going to say a lot of it has some immigration impact. So we want to talk a little bit about that today. All right. Again, Sandra Sheffer, host of Racing the Races. This is like one of those episodes where we're going to talk a little bit more about immigration than any of the other things. Community activist Christine Sanon-Jules is going to meet me on the stage in a little bit. But yeah, so she's getting stationary in order for her to go ahead and join me. But she wanted me to just go ahead and get started because we're going to try to have maybe a 30-minute session today. Talk about, you know, some of the things that's going on, what we see people are doing in the community, what are some options that folks have ahead of them. You know, and when I think about what options people have, folks are going to have to make some real tough decisions in the next few months or so, particularly Haitian nationals, Venezuelan nationals, some Nicaraguan nationals, Cuban nationals. They're going to have to make some really tough decisions in the next couple of weeks because of what's happening. And what got me was when some of the decisions came out, I was reading some of the articles, and I know that when the current president was campaigning, one of the things that he talked about, not one of the things, his main thing was we're going to stop illegal immigration. We're going to take people out of the country who are here illegally without proper documentations. And, you know, there are folks who are going to be very supportive of that, right? Even, you know, your most liberal of liberals or whatever, if there's a person who came to the United States and they squandered their right to be here, you know, a person may be okay with that person not being able to stay, right? You had your chances, you were here, and then you did some things that's contrary, you know, usually it's some serious things that are contrary to American law, and then you have to go. So people understand that. But what we realized shortly, not even shortly, quickly after he was inaugurated, was that this was the immigration policy was not only going to impact undocumented folks. There were going to be documented people that were going to feel the consequences of this, right? And, you know, first they were like, no, because again, a lot of people aren't going to complain if who you're targeting are the bad hombres, right? And what we, again, shortly came to see was that this was not only about bad hombres. So the point I wanted to make was that I was reading something today, and they finally admitted that they are, in fact, targeting individuals who are here legally and those who are undocumented, right? So the article said, yes, they're pressing, moving forward on detaining individuals who do have legal status and people who are considered undocumented. And again, like I said, they may have said that before in a piece, but today was the first time that I actually read that. And that is very, very unfortunate that that's a position that the administration is going to take, and that people are supportive of that position, right? Because at the end of the day, what everyone, well, at least what I think most people understood was that no, you don't want to have people in the country that you don't know is here. You don't want people in the country that are committing crimes. So if those are the folks that are being targeted, most people were going to be supportive of that. But now we, again, in short order, we came to see that that's not in fact the case. So Christine, community activist, is ready to hop on. So I'm going to stop on that point and bring her on stage and let her talk too, because we probably have a hard stop today at like 8 o'clock. So I'm going to bring her up. Hey, we got viewers. How are you? I can't hear you. You must be still on mute. You're on mute.
I was on mute. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we're 5 years into Zoom and we're still in all this stuff, and we're still talking while we're on mute.
Yes. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I just thought, yes, it's important. A lot happened today, and I'm really angry. And I don't know how to express that anger because I just feel like it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying that no matter what we do, we still get hit with roadblock after roadblock with this administration. And so I needed a safe space, right? For us to just sort of, let's talk this through. Let's see what our options are. And let's be realistic, right? Let's sit down and be realistic about what we're embarking on, the journey that we are now going to have for the next 3.5 years. Like, what are we really dealing with?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, thank you so much for having me on tonight.
No, definitely. Thank you. Cause you were like, listen, we gotta talk, right? We gotta do some more organizing. Cause you're more the organizer. Like, I'm the person that likes to run my mouth, but you bring people together, create space for a lot of folks. You know what I mean? Like, this is a lot of this is your idea for us to even come and talk about these things. So I'm glad you were like, yo, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Right. And so you said you were mad today, but I know you were mad yesterday too, right? Because you were actually
I was mad yesterday. Oh my gosh, yesterday.
Talk about that a little bit first, because that made national news.
So I will say this: yesterday, I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken. Today, I'm livid. But yesterday, I went to the Miami-Dade County Commission meeting. And I posted my video on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So I went to this meeting. They were supposed to vote on item 11A2. That's what they were supposed to vote on. And this is whether or not ICE has to release public records of who they're detaining and where they're taking them, like which facilities that they are in, so that their loved ones can find them. The fact that we even have to put that on a vote is mind-boggling to me. Okay, that we're okay with ICE just disappearing people and no questions asked, right?
So you mentioned loved one, but it's also counsel. It's also attorneys that would have some difficulty finding those individuals, getting information on those individuals too, is my understanding. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if that's not in fact the case, but I think it's also counsel.
Yeah. So that was what we were there for. But what we got. So a lot of people showed up to this event, and they came ready to make a testimony. The chairman said that we're not voting. We've decided to defer this item. And in deferring this item, meaning we're not voting on this. You do not have to give public testimony today. But
you're saying do not have to. It basically was like, you better not, right? Because if you do, when we actually want to talk about this, no one can say anything, right? So it's more than like you don't have to, right?
Exactly. So he said, like, if one of you gives a public testimony, though, like, you have that option. If one of you gives a testimony, then all testimonies are open for this item today, and you do not get a chance. If we bring this item back up, you don't get a chance.
No one gets a chance. So let's be clear. No one gets a chance to talk about it when it does actually come up, if it does.
Exactly. So people were confused. And this woman gets up and I'm so sorry. I'm on a show right now, and this man is trying to hit on me. Like, get out of my car.
See, that's what happens when you're cute.
It doesn't matter. Hold on a second. I'm on a show. I'm on a show. Yeah, no, I don't need your number, but thank you. Lord have mercy. You know, he pulled up.
So this is a live episode, y'all, not recorded. This is
Oh
actually
my
live.
gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I apologize. I apologize. He pulled up next to me and I had been trying to ignore him the whole time.
Yeah.
I truly apologize for that.
It's live, so it's all good.
Anyway.
Yes. All right. So the young lady was trying to
Yes.
get some clarification and some understanding, like many of us were.
Yes. Yes. She was just confused. So she stood up and she said, I'm not sure exactly what she said because she was so faint. It was hard to hear. And the fact that she was so faint just shows that she was not aggressive. If none of us even heard the question, you can tell that she was not aggressive. But I think she says, so what does that mean? Like, she stood up and she said, what does that mean? That, like, that we can't testify. Like, that's it. One sentence. What does that mean? They came up to her. They were like, you got to go. She goes, wait, what? No, I was just asking a question. And in her confusion, they thought that she was getting aggressive, and they dragged her.
I saw, like, I think part of the video I saw was like maybe 4 or 5 guys were like
Yes.
dragging her out of the chambers.
So the sergeant at arms, they dress in suits. They dress in suits, so you don't know that they're security. And they, like 4 of them came up to her and like they had her legs, they had her arms. It was heartbreaking. So I'm sitting right there. They're passing me, right? I'm right there on the edge. They're passing me, and as they pass me, and I hear her screaming, she's like, "I can walk, and I can stop talking. I don't mind. Like I can stop talking, but get off of me." Tears just start streaming down my face because I'm thinking, this is what democracy has become. Like, this is what using your voice gets in America or in Dade County. You get dragged. She was confused. She was not trying to be disruptive by any means. She just wanted clarity.
Yeah, and let me tell you, so I did go back and I watched the meeting and what the commissioners were saying, and it wasn't until maybe after they explained it, probably like the 10th time, that I understood what happened. Because initially what I understood was, we're deferring the item, but if you speak today, then that means you can't speak when we bring it up, right? So when I hear that, I heard that particular person wouldn't be able to speak the next time they bring the item up, right? And then they kept going on and said, then afterwards, it was like, no, if we open up public comments today and any one person says anything about this, then that means that if and when we do bring this item up, nobody at all will be able to say something. And I'm sitting here like, wait, what? Is that the rule? And they did say like, oh, this isn't a rule that we just put in place today, that had already in fact been the rule, right? However, I have to believe, well, I believe, I'm not gonna say I have to, want to, whatever, but I do believe that they kind of manipulated the process a little bit, right? Because this was such a hot topic item that they knew people were going to come and talk about. They didn't want to smoke behind it, even though as an elected official there to represent the people, there are times you're going to have to take that smoke, right? They didn't want to smoke behind it, and that's why they deferred that item, right? Because at the end of the day, it's either you hear the people today, or you just be like, you know what, we're not even going to do this, and you just let it go. You understand what I'm saying? Particularly since, and this I got from a news reporting, they said whatever this process has been in place since 2017, like it was something that was done during the first administration and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not like they were making any decisions to change something that already existed. So if all of those things are true, then why is it you would not hear it when you have the public there to speak on it, right? And one of the first names I heard them call was a very prominent immigration attorney. Ira Kurzban was there. He's like the first name, very prominent immigration attorney who got a whole lot of things to do, who litigate all type of high profile federal cases. You get that person to come in the room and then you decide to defer the item for what? Like, talk about it now, right? So I think they did that deliberately, and that's very unfortunate that those are the elected officials that we have right now.
I do want to thank him because he could have spoken, but he took into consideration that this could be a problem if it ever got brought up again, and he deferred
But he's smart enough. Well, I'm not gonna say the other people aren't smart enough, but at this, so smart probably in the word. He understood the process well enough that he wouldn't do that. But when you're talking about a person who hasn't been a lawyer for 45 years, trying to get them to comprehend what it is that you're talking about, when like in a common sense way, it kind of doesn't make common sense that a person couldn't say anything. So there's a difference between him and the average Joe or average Jane that's trying to understand like what's really happening, particularly because they took their time. So yes, I do commend him for not doing that, but I also have to say he understood the process a lot better than most of the people that were probably in that room.
Yeah. And you know what upset me? And I get like, everyone's like, this couldn't have happened. Like what I'm about to say, they're like, it couldn't have happened because, the commissioners have a good relationship with the sergeant at arms. And so nobody could have spoken out. But it just broke my heart that nobody said, okay, you can get your hands off of her. Like she seems like she's willing to leave respectfully. Like nobody stood up.
And there are women on that commission.
Yeah.
Women, immigrants, people of color. Like, I mean, that was just all the way.
Everyone stayed silent.
Yeah.
Silent.
Yeah.
And so, we need to, as a society, we have to figure out what kind of government we want because we chose this. I don't care how you slice it. Every single one of those people were elected. Mm-hmm. They were elected. They didn't pay to get in there. They didn't have an interview. And
some people gonna argue about whether or not they paid to get in there or not, though.
No, but what I'm saying is like at the end of the day,
it's supposed to be one man, one vote.
Yeah, they were. There's still a system that got them in, and the system is run by the people. Like it's our votes that get them in there. Mm-hmm. So if we need to organize as a people and say, who do we want representing us moving forward?
Yeah.
And how do we organize to make sure that this, I'm not saying never happens again, but that the next time around we have people that represent, our best interests.
Yeah. No. So yesterday was really a day. It was just really a day on what happened. And then today, right? So I titled the show about like immigrants paying the cost of all of this zealous advocacy, right? Because I just feel like, just every time, the advocates and all those folks come up with something that seems to be beneficial and it comes off as a win, the next thing you know, then there's like a gut punch and it just gets even tougher, for the migrant community that they're there trying to advocate for and protect from, some of which seems to be lawless, and I'm like, so what do we do? Does the advocacy community, do advocates continue to do what they're doing to try to get these folks to do the right thing? I don't know, because, I just, that part of it, I'm still a little conflicted on is like whether or not we continue to zealously advocate in that way, considering I believe we're dealing with people who are just cruel, just cruel for no reason. And then, when you're dealing with a cruel person, they're not going to take a L like at all. They're just going to get meaner and more vicious. And that's what I've been seeing so far. So I wonder, do we need to pivot? How do we continue? Like, what do we continue to do? Do we pivot or we just continue with this advocacy in the direction that we're going?
The Trump administration is not taking any losses. They don't want any losses. Mm-mm. So when they saw that we were challenging them as a people, as a whole, as a nation, they don't like that. So they're going to push back until they get exactly what they want. We have to ask ourselves, do we have enough political power to get what we want? Because we can be as zealous and loud as we want to, but at the end of the day, it's the votes that count. It's SCOTUS. When they're putting in the votes, do we have enough people on our side? When Congress is going to vote, do we have enough people on our side? And we're thinking that we have the Constitution on our side, but this man is rewriting the Constitution without Congress.
Well, he didn't even rewrite it. He's just totally disregarding it.
He ripped it up and threw it out. Like he probably can't even spell Constitution.
Yeah, so totally disregard.
So right now we have to look at what do we have on our side? Who do we have on our side? and we need to move strategically. And I know that everybody's passionate. I believe that pressure bursts pipes, but this administration is not your typical pipe. Like, they're not taking our advocacy lightly, and they are out for revenge. They don't like the fact that, the president's ratings keep dropping up and down, like they or his approval. They don't like all this stuff. They want to stick to their plan, and we are in their way. So they're finding these people. They fight hard. They
Mhm.
fight hard. Yes, there's more of us than there are of them, but are we being strategic in the way we move?
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of what we can really do, right? We can't. It's not now, right? You can't do it now. Like, we did have some opportunities. I back in April 1st, when we had those 2 seats in Florida that we were hoping people had gotten more involved with and engaged with, that they could flip. But when they realized that there was like some movement on the Florida seats, they pulled the lady from New York, right? Because if we were able to flip Florida, flip that New York seat, we'd have been having some very different conversations today, right? And when they realized that, people like, oh shoot, we have an opportunity, we can do that, right? But even with us being able to do that, what ended up happening too was that, what is it? I think like 3 electeds died. Like, there was like 3 members of the House of Representatives on the Democratic side. I know at least 2, and I think it ended up being 3.
Started. Don't get me started.
So even when we were
the can of worms.
Oh my goodness, it just was like we were, whoa, yo, we about to do this, and then the grands just
these members of Congress that were dying. They were sick and dying, and we let them run and win.
Yeah.
That's why I'm talking about strategy. Let's even go to our RGB, right? I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG. Even with her, I believe she should have stepped down so that Obama could have replaced her with somebody. Like, we're not thinking into the future. We're not building our bench. Democrats think right now. I want to hold my power right now. And it is tearing our country apart because of our lack of planning. All of this stuff is happening. Mm-hmm. We are 3 members down in the House.
And those, and I think most of them are in like Republican states. I think maybe it was an Arizona person that died last, and that might be a Democrat.
Texas,
but it was Texas.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Who was the other one?
It might have been 2 in Texas. It might have been 2 of them in Texas or something like that, and like 1 in Arizona, or maybe like a different state. But I know it was 3, right? It was like
1 more.
Yeah, it was at least 3 of them, and that, where we were like, oh, we could get it, and then 3 goes, and then now these governors get to decide when they want to set those elections and all those, and House members have to run every 2 years. So if they drag it on to the end, people are going to be running now, and then they got to turn around, and run again. So they'll be running for like 2 years, which that happened in Florida, like when Elsie Hastings passed away, like 3 months after he was sworn in, he passed away. Our governor, it took 8 months for them to get somebody to fill that seat, right? And those folks, once they got elected, had to turn around and run again, because those are only 2-year seats. So it's just a lot that's going on, and we're like, it's so much happening that we didn't even get to like a lot of what happened today, right? Because we talked a lot about what happened yesterday, and we, and most politics are local, right? Politics are local, so we do have to take into consideration who we're voting in as our local elected officials. Yes, the people in DC make a lot of decisions for us, but local is big too, right? Because we had our commission, our county commission had an opportunity to just do what their local folks was asking them for. If you get that much community to come out on an issue, right? And we're talking at a broad scale of community, from, the academics to just a regular person to the family member that's affected. You're supposed to create that space and listen to them and make decisions based on the people who put you in office, want. And then for them to defer that and do what they did, that just goes to show that, when their time comes up, this is something that you have to remember this, right? And advocates have to continue to remind people of what they did, because what also happens is, with all of this, all this information, things happen. They be like, oh, that's old news, or people don't remember. It's something new that's in their face. So they're not thinking about historically what has happened. But we need to continue to remind them that, listen, these are the people who decided to not address an issue that the community wanted to hear about. These are the people who sat there, said absolutely nothing when they was dragging a woman. 4 men was dragging a woman out of a meeting because she wanted to speak. Are you kidding me? These can't be the people you want to have representing.
They arrested her and charged her with resisting arrest and battery of a law enforcement officer.
That part. I think Kathy Rundle's gonna dismiss those charges, though. She's not gonna find no jury in Miami-Dade that's gonna convict that woman. Not unanimous. No, she ain't. Not in no Miami-Dade. I don't care who they try to put on there. So yeah, I can't imagine that case going forward. I would be surprised, and I'll be surprised if they double down and prosecute that woman. I would really be surprised. So I think they had to charge her, but in terms of like whether or not they think they're gonna get a jury of her peers to convict her, I would recommend that prosecutor decide to no action that case.
So before I do have to get off, but before I do want to just do a quick touch on this birthright citizenship that everybody's really upset about. That happened with SCOTUS.
So SCOTUS didn't really address the issue of birthright citizenship in the sense, like, they said something that's so confusing that most people don't even understand what they're talking about, right? Because again, with the birthright citizenship, that's a constitutional thing that I don't even think SCOTUS can go ahead and say much about it, right? They'll have to what I think would have to happen is that we will have to have 2 undocumented people have a baby, and then when it's time to issue the birth certificate, the United States decide to say that this person is not an American, right? They're like, whatever, which is going to be interesting, because what if you have 2 undocumented folks from 2 different countries? Like, what nationality are you about to give this kid that was born in America, right? So I think what may have to happen or may have to happen is that the 2 undocumented folks that have this kid, that when the clerk of, whoever the vital statistic person is, refuse to issue them a birth certificate that say that they're American, and then litigation ensue, then that's when the court is going to address that particular issue. That's the only way I can see it, because I don't see how they can just say something and just strip people of their citizenship that were born in the United States, considering that's how it goes, right? So I think it will be something they created space to, if it does become an issue, then it'll get up to them, and then they'll see what they're going to do with that, right?
And let's be real, like, they're born here, so, but you don't, where do you want their citizenship to be? What are you going to print on their American birth certificate? Like, where are you going to print that they were born?
They probably won't issue it. That's the thing. They're going to probably not want to issue it.
But they were born in the hospital. I mean, it's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it is. But I have to say that that's not something that's like, well, okay. So this is the thing. There are countries who just the mere fact that you were born there doesn't make you a national of that country, right? There's still a process that you have to go through in order for you to become a national. You can, right? Like, you can, but there's still a process that you have to go through. So the idea that people have to go through more than just being born here and without having to actually do anything, it's not that that's unusual, because there are countries that does that, right? But that ain't America, right? So like, yo, America, this is not what y'all about. This is, I mean, y'all were about that, but then y'all decided that, yo, we're not about that right now, right? So if you want to change that, then do the process. If you straight up really want to amend your constitution to say that people don't become citizens merely by the fact that them being born in the United States, then go ahead and do that. But an executive order is not how that works. Making people go to court and litigate whether or not their kid that was born here is a citizen or not, that ain't how that goes. You know what I mean? That's just not how America does things. And yes, they can change it, but if you want to change it the way you're supposed to.
And that's the argument I had with somebody the other day. I was like, Trump can do all things that he wants to do, but do it the right way. go through a process. You know, I may not agree with it, but if he goes through the process, he goes through the process. He's not even giving the representatives a chance to represent their community. That's why we
But they don't
send
want to, because there's some
representatives.
things that they can do, though. There's some things that they
Yeah.
can do. Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying is, like, Trump is a one-man show, and that's not how the U.S. is supposed to be built to operate.
Right. Particularly since, you know, we have three co-equal branches of government. They're supposed to have checks and balances. And then, you know, in effect, when the minute that he whined about, oh, the courts aren't letting me do what I want to do and they're not allowing me to push through my agenda, we're supposed to be like, that's right. That's exactly what the court is supposed to do, not allow you to push through an agenda, particularly if it does not conform with the laws that Congress made or, you know, that exist in the country. They're not supposed to allow you to just push through an agenda because that's something that you want to do and is contrary to law, right? So, yeah, and the fact that, you know, the Supreme Court on some instances is giving him all this grace to do certain things is, and then Congress not acting at all, right? Because executive orders aren't law. The next person who comes in can come up with an executive order that says the complete opposite. So the fact that Congress is just sitting back, not doing anything, not legislating, is also very problematic. You know,
I agree, but I mean that's a whole other conversation. We could say who they're bought by, but anyway, thank you so much for having me on. I think that the one message I want to leave to everybody right now, I really want everyone to, you know, first off, sometimes it's good to just shut things off. And it's a lot of information at once. Sometimes it's good to just take a break and let's regroup, re-strategize, reorganize, and then let's hit the ground running with a strong strategy. But don't feel overwhelmed because you're reading news article after news article and watching this show and that show, and just really, really, really take a minute. Let's take a minute. Let's not react right away, and let's find a way that we can fight for our loved ones in a way where we can win. So thank you. Keep hope alive.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And I think we do need to think a lot more before we just react, because in thinking all the way through, like, what are all the possibilities of what can happen if we litigate this, right? And always think worst possible scenario, particularly when you're dealing with a person who's really just very emotional in their response. They're not going to take any L's and they're going to just get meaner and meaner as things go on, right? So just think about like, what's the worst possible scenario? But probably what's happening is some people, they probably can't even wrap their brain around the types of things that he can come up with. So they're like, even if they thought of worst possible scenario, it wouldn't look like what he's doing, because what he's doing is so just like, oh my God, like, how can you do this, right?
Yeah.
So we have some of that. The other thing that happened today is that they made it official that they're going to get rid of TPS for Haitian nationals, and all of their paperwork is going to end really August 3rd with a 30-day grace period, meaning September 2nd. They need to have figured something else out about what it is that they're going to do. And I suspect they're going to start, like, you know, they're going to continue to go to people's houses, go get them, do whatever, you know. It's going to be a hectic summer. It's going to be a hectic summer. All right.
Well, that's probably the biggest news today. And I think that before we address the Haitian community, I think that a few of us should get together and really communicate what the next steps are.
The next conversation should be. All righty then. So we'll talk offline. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programs next week. I'll be back on my show on Wednesday, Racing the Races, 5:30. And I think we're thinking of doing the Thursday segment a little bit later in the evening. So, you know, we'll announce that. We'll probably do it on Thursday, but we'll probably do it a little bit later in the evening, because it seemed like people, you know, it's like get past dinner time, they're winding down, whatever, want to listen for a little 30 minutes or something like that. So the Thursday show will probably be a little bit later, and then I'll see you guys on Wednesday. All right.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Elections have consequences.